The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and are not those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. The phone lines are open. Call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788. That's 220-WSTU. It's time for Stewart Laser Talk with your host, Dr. Tred J. Rizacker.
I'm 5'10" and 242 pounds.
I always say this is the biggest I'm ever going to be, and I said that like 20 pounds ago.
A third of Americans are obese, another third is overweight.
Obesity is the biggest threat to the health, welfare, and future of this country.
I've always been overweight.
I've got diabetes,
Sleep apnea, heart disease.
everything's hurting now.
It's a lot easier to lose weight than it is to keep weight off.
This is probably going to be the first generation of children who are going to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents.
18% of our children.
It's not only health, it's about survival and well-being of the United States as a nation.
You don't crave broccoli, and our generation has grown up craving a Big Mac.
I want to think that there's something better for me.
Unless we're able to control this epidemic, we're going to have an abundance of chronic disease.
All of us have to be part of the solution to reduce obesity.
The weight of the nation is out of control, but we can fix that.
If we don't now take this as a really urgent national priority, we are all going to pay a really serious price.
Obesity will crush the United States in oblivion.
Good morning, Stuart, Florida. Hey, listen, I was once a fat, hopeless doctor. I'm still a doctor, but I'm not hopeless or fat anymore. And I struggled with losing weight. And I finally, 12, 13 years ago, I found a solution for my own weight loss. And I was able to reverse my type 2 diabetes for the most part. And I got a little story to tell about that. Hey, if you've just tuned in, my name is Dr. Tred Rizacker, and I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I'm licensed. I've been in practice for 36 years. Can't believe it. I went to Martin County High School in 1979, knew I was going to be a chiropractor from day one since I was a little kid. And when I was 24, I went off to college and I graduated, as they say, with a degree in chiropractic healthcare. I'm a chiropractic physician and worked in New York for, like 17 years. And then finally came back to my home, which is Stuart, Florida. And I'm so grateful to be here. I'm exuding with energy and love for this town. You know, it's changing. There's no doubt about it. It's still Stuart, Florida, though. It's a heck of a lot better than many places out there. So with that said, I have a business and I have a solution, and it's something that you can access, and it's here for you. I did it myself and it was incredibly effective. I lost weight. I lost inches. I reversed my blood sugar. I literally did this in like 4 weeks. I'm not kidding. It was without exercise. And it was without any strenuous exercise. Let's be realistic. And there was no harsh dieting or any major food changes for me at that time. I just had to give up one meal a day because the laser lipo that we use at the Slim Body Laser Spa in a 30-minute time frame will release into the tissue safely about 600 calories. Now, those aren't calories like, when you eat food. These are 600 calories of pure free fatty acids, fat, which should be your goal. If you want to live longer, feel better, and you got too much body fat compared to lean muscle, you're in serious risk of metabolic syndrome, cancer, stroke, heart attacks, you name it, you know it, but it's common. It seems normal, and it's not okay. This process does not require strenuous exercise or harsh dieting. You literally lie on your back for 30 minutes. The staff applies these laser paddles. They look like about the size of an iPhone. Okay, we all know what that is. And there's diodes. There's little laser diodes in the face of the paddle. Okay, and it's a red light device at a very, very low power. Nothing strong, nothing that goes through the body. It penetrates about 1/8 of an inch under your skin. And after 30 minutes of those paddles being moved around, you will release 400 to 600 calories of fatty acids. That would be triglycerides, which were stored up in your fat cells. They're protected by the fat cells. And when the laser opens up these cells, it's like opening a can of tuna that you stored in your garage. You know, you go out there, you got some emergency canned tuna or canned food in your garage, and as long as you don't open up the cans, it stays there for years. And then you're like, I need some food. And you go and you open up the can and the calories are released. That's all our laser does. It opens up those fat cells in an area that's very difficult for you to do on your own. And as a result of that, you got to burn them. You got to eat it. You can't put it in your kitchen and leave it there and it'll rot. You got to burn it efficiently and quickly. And that's what we do at the Slim Body Laser Spa. So the program is 3 times a week for 3 weeks. Hey, we've even been able to do it every day for 2 weeks to 3 weeks. If you got a lot of fat and your metabolism is fairly normal, which is most of you are, you can do it every day, Monday through Friday. It's 1 hour every day, 3 to 4 weeks. Man, we've had people that are morbidly obese with, 300 pounds plus, 5'4", 5'2", and 300 pounds. And 5 days a week for 5 weeks, lose 40% of their girth. I'll show you the pictures. Got them right in my office. It's unusual. We don't see too many people with that kind of body fat, but this process is something that you just got to check it out. You got to see it. You got to come in and find out about it. Hey, listen, I've got free consultations. All you got to do is call 772-223-5885. I do not expect you to remember that phone number. Heck, you can't even remember your own phone numbers or even where your car was parked for the most part. So, but you can't forget my name, Dr. Tread, T-R-E-D. My dad had a friend named Treadwell, and he named me Tread. I've never met another person with my name. I've seen them online, but I've never met another person with the name Tread. So my office is called Dr. Tread's Slim Body Laser Spa. This is not a spa or a salon where you've got estheticians and facial specialists and 17 different procedures being offered to you like some kind of smorgasbord or like you're at the cafeteria. We have one product. We offer one service, and that is safe, effective, subcutaneous fat reduction along with nutritional help, BMI, BMR, meal planning, old school, what you should have learned in kindergarten, but you weren't taught. We don't sell supplements and we don't sell home shipped food. We sell knowledge and accountability because of the way the process works. You come in, you fill out some paperwork, you meet with me. I go over, watch a 6-minute DVD on the laser and how it works, the manufacturer's information. And then I'll come in, introduce myself, ask you, why are you here? What areas do you need help with? It's about you, not me telling you how great we are. It's about whether you need help or not. And we'll go over that. I'll determine by what you're saying if it's my procedure is something that can truly solve what you're suffering with. It's not, I think you have a problem. You got to come up with the problem. This is to help you. It's patient-centered care. I make sure you don't have any contraindications, very few that would contraindicate the application of the laser. One that might be a contraindication would be active cancer treatment, right? You're on chemo somewhere because you had cancer, and it isn't a good idea to be, you need to focus on that first. Complete kidney failure would be another reason not to do it. If your body is, if you're on dialysis and you only can take a certain amount of fluid, we have to treat you very carefully, but there's no side effects from the laser. It doesn't create any soreness or pain or any problems at all. And once we accept you, I'll explain it to you. You can touch the laser. You can feel it. We even have a $49 option for you to try it one time, but you got to be qualified by me first. You can't just walk in and anybody can do that. It's got to come after a genuine desire to know more and to learn more about it. If everything is good, it's a prepaid plan. We charge $2,800 for the plan. Up front, I'm not lying about the fee. That's going to give you 9-session plan, all the nutritional help you need, a program, a guaranteed 3-inch loss around your girth in 3 spots, an inch in 3 spots, totals 3, whole body vibration, detoxification, and follow up with pictures, measurements, and you become what I call an alumni. After you finish the 9 sessions, you're now an alumni client, and your price point drops 66% less for any future visits that you buy. So right now, one laser session is about $300 times 9, between $2,700 to $2,800. Once you're past the alumni and you need more visits or you'd like to continue, the price is between $100 to $120 a session. You can buy packages of 1 a la carte, or you can do packages of 20 and get more of a discount. And as long as we're there, as long as we're still open, you can always come in and revivify and re-energize and kickstart or continue your weight loss and your body sculpting. It's a club. It's a gift. Okay. Now, I want to preempt to tell you something that we are dealing with an enormous amount of environmental toxins and poisons that we're being exposed to. If you don't believe that, then I'm going to give you one simple truth about toxins and about poisons. Okay. Now, your ancestors have dealt with poisons since the beginning of time. In other words, your creator gave you the ability to throw up if you ate a bad clam, right? Have you ever been up north and gotten a bad clam? We don't eat a lot of clams down here, but I sure did up in Long Island. Man, you eat a bad clam, in 2 to 3 minutes that puppy was not good. And your stomach gets, oh man, I'm feeling a little nauseous here. You get a little sweaty and you throw up. Your body rejects it. You puke it out. Maybe it's got to go through the system and it's got to go out the other end. It might take a little longer, but once it's gone and your body gets rid of it, that's something which is very easy for the body to do because it's water soluble. So poisons are classified in 2 separate ways: water soluble and fat soluble. Water soluble toxins, bacteria, viruses, dirty plates, kids that sneeze on you. Your body has a mechanism because water soluble toxins can be rinsed away with water. So take your little garden hose and rinse the dirt off the counter, or put your plate under the sink with some egg on it, and it rinses away because it's water soluble. And we're water soluble. 76% of our body's water. So we have this incredible ability to get rid of water soluble toxins. They are not a problem for us over long term. They don't accumulate in your body. But there's another classification of toxins which accumulates in your body because they're fat soluble. They can only be removed through something that cleans them, binds with them like soap. Okay. If you wash your hands and you got some grease on your hands, you're out there working on your car or maybe your boat and you got some grease, water's not going to rinse it away, is it? Because it's petroleum based. And you need soap and you need a brush and you need some Gojo to get rid of it off your hands. Well, your body is ingesting these same types of toxins are coming into your bloodstream through your breath, through skin contact, through the clothing we wear, and through, the smells we smell, and through the gassing and the poisons that are being released into our environment by corporations, businesses, by each other. So, and you think to yourself, well, we live in such a clean area. I don't notice any toxins, The air is clean, it's fresh. And you know what? We do live in a very clean area, but that's not the only place that you get toxins. It doesn't just come from the air. It comes in the food you eat. It comes in the clothing you wear. It comes in the things you put on your body. It comes on your, the type of job you have. These are petroleum-based poisons. They're the dioxins, the PCBs, these chemicals that were in that train that derailed in Palestine, Ohio, is filled with these petrol-based chemicals. Now, these are new to humans. These petrol-based chemicals are brand new to us. And I mean this. 165 years ago, and you can look it up, we discovered oil as a culture. Some guy in Pennsylvania, now they had oil that bubbled up out of the ground, looked like little pools of tar, and they knew that stuff was toxic, and they scraped it up and they put it in lamps and they used it for different things, but it was hardly in the environment. When they went a little deeper and that stuff came out of the ground as a form of crude oil in any kind of mass amount, there was someone in Pennsylvania 165 years ago who rubbed his hands and went, "Oh my God, look at this stuff. I'm going to change the world with this stuff. I'm going to use it. You know what? I got that darn Model T. And every time I drive on the car, the roads are all rutted out, big holes, sinkholes. I think we could make this into something, mix it with rock and sand, and we could use it because it seems to harden. I'm going to pave the road from New York to California so I can get there without bouncing around. That's called asphalt. And from Michigan to Texas, everything is paved. Those are petroleum based. I'm going to use this stuff to, all these herbal medications that we have to go, we got to grow plants, we got to look for it. I think we can create them in a lab with using this fossil fuel and make all the prescription medications. They're all made from petroleum. And this stuff is the building block of life. Petroleum is a fossil fuel, and it used to be starch. It used to be a plant that was in the ground for gazillions of years, compacted with dirt and heat, and it formed more carbons. It transferred into fossil fuel, which has carbon. And we're carbon-based creatures. Your body is made with carbon from the plants you eat. Well, fossil fuels is carbon, but it's been percolated and cooked underground to make it into a fossil fuel. So that would be how many carbons are on it. Now you have propane and hexane and octane. Propane is, I think, five carbons. Hex is 6, I think. And octane, I know, is 8. Well, when it has 2 carbons, it's called a starch. When you have 5 and 6 and 8 carbons attached to it, it becomes fuel. And it's combustible and it's toxic as heck. But at one point it was starch. So this is a natural occurring thing. And when you take that fossil fuel out of the ground and you break it up into smaller parts and you make plastics and you make flame retardant and you make clothing out of it and you make the plastic smells. The smell in a car when you smell the plastic, that is dioxin. Dioxin is what is in super small amounts can create cancer, disease, and death in smaller animals in small amounts. And what's happening is we're being poisoned by these dioxins and these byproducts of petroleum slowly in little bits, like the old story of the frog. You put him in the hot water, he hops right out. Saves his life. It's too hot. But if you put him in that water and you turn it up slowly and you cook him slowly, he doesn't know he's in this state. And by the time he figures it out, it's too late. That's the best analogy I can tell you as to what's happening with these poisons and that they're being absorbed by our body. Okay, so with that, I am going to lead this into a 10-minute production that was done on YouTube that I've grabbed. And I think that this guy will explain what these persistent organic compounds are, how they get into our supply, and that it's a problem. And then after that, I will go into some very simple things you can do today to help detoxify and get rid of some of these poisons, some of them. All right. And then when we get back, we'll go over this some more. So pay attention here. Here we go.
Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smeeds, and welcome to APE's video notes for topic 8.7, which is persistent organic pollutants, which we'll be abbreviating as POPs throughout this video. Our objective for the day is to be able to describe the effects of these POPs, or these persistent organic pollutants, on ecosystems. And the skill that we'll practice at the end of today's video will involve explaining an environmental concept or process. So as I mentioned at the beginning of today's video, POPs stands for persistent organic pollutants. Now, if we break down the terms that make up this type of pollution, it's easy to understand and remember what this actually refers to instead of trying to just commit to memory exactly what POPs are. So the P is for persistent, which means long lasting. So they stay in environments and in organisms' bodies for a long time. The O stands for organic or carbon-based. Now, typically, this is going to come from production of some sort, whether it's pharmaceutical production, so medications, whether it's plastic production. But these are going to be organic or carbon-based compounds. And then the P, of course, is for pollutants. Now, remember, we want to try to specify a pollutant. We want to avoid saying pollution. That's too vague. We need to go for pollutants specifically. So these are typically going to be a synthetic or human-made compounds. And one characteristic of them is that they do not easily break down in the environment, hence the term persistent. So they last a long time. They can last decades in the sediments, in marine or just terrestrial aquatic ecosystems or in the soil. And they build up and accumulate in organisms' bodies. And so remember that P in POPs is for persistent, and that's really key to understanding their environmental consequences. Now, why do they build up in organisms' bodies? Why are they so persistent? And that's because they're fat soluble. So fat soluble refers to this idea that they are going to dissolve into the fat tissues in animals and that they're not going to be water soluble. So they're not going to easily dissolve into the bloodstream and pass out of the body via the blood and the urine. So they're not going to go get filtered by the kidneys easily and excreted out as waste, which is the case with many other forms of pollution. So let's take a look at a diagram to help us understand this. What we have here are POPs, which are these little kind of purplish, blobs that we can see building up in between these yellow blobs, which are fat tissue. And so what happens is they accumulate in this fat tissue over time because they're soluble or dissolvable into fat, which means that they don't dissolve very well into blood. Blood is water-based, and so that's going to lead to them, again, building up in these fatty tissues instead of dissolving easily into blood and being excreted as urine. The problem is that over time, they can actually be released slowly from fat tissue. So they could be released from the fat tissue surrounding the liver. They can enter the bloodstream. And then from there, they can go impact other parts of the body, such as the brain or vital organs like the liver. And so these pollutants build up in organisms and they build up in ecosystems. They're persistent. And that's one of the reasons that they are such a problem from an environmental standpoint. So now let's take a look at some specific examples and sources of persistent organic pollutants. So we'll run through a list of examples and then take a look at three more specifically. So we have DDT, which was a formerly used insecticide. Even though it's been phased out in most countries, it still persists in the soil in many different ecosystems. And so again, these are persistent. They last a long time. So decades and decades after they're phased out, they're still found in soil, in waters, and in the bodies of organisms because they accumulate in food webs. And we'll be talking about bioaccumulation in our next video. And so that will be a topic coming up where we'll expand on this further. PCBs are from plastic production. Sometimes they're used in paint additives. PBDEs are a class of compounds that are used to fireproof furniture, clothing, things of that nature. BPA is another plastic additive. And so if you're struggling to commit all of these to memory, it's not so critical that you have every one of these down. But remember that plastics are a large source of POPs. And so if you are producing plastics, your facility may be releasing PCBs or BPA into the environment. Dioxins are another example. These are going to come from fertilizer production and the combustion of waste. So sometimes we burn trash, we incinerate it to reduce its volume going to a landfill and to turn it into electricity, but that can release these dioxins. Then we have phthalates. Phthalates are from plastic production. So again, another instance of producing plastics leading to POPs getting into ecosystems. And then we have perchlorates. Perchlorates are going to come especially from military facilities that are launching rockets or using missiles to practice, how they might use them in combat, or areas where rockets are frequently launching from. So if we look at some more specific examples, a medication, the pharmaceutical industry is a big source of POPs or persistent organic pollutants. So this could come from, steroids, hormones that are being given to people to alter their reproductive systems, antibiotics. All of these things pass through the human body into wastewater, and wastewater treatment plants often can't filter these out all the way. And so they get into aquatic ecosystems when that effluent or that water is released from the wastewater treatment plant. And again, because they're persistent, they stay in those bodies of water for a long period of time. And then dioxins, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about. Those are going to come again from the burning of waste, especially medical waste. So when you burn medical waste, there are syringes or medical compounds, and those things can release dioxins into the ecosystems. And so again, how do these get into ecosystems? We burn medical waste, or we burn other types of waste or fertilizer. They get into aquatic ecosystems or land-based ecosystems, and then humans can actually become exposed to them through our consumption of animal products. So we'll talk about shortly here using a diagram how exactly these pollutants might make it into an ecosystem, then into the body of an animal that we then eat and take the pollutants into our bodies. So here's that diagram I was mentioning. And I like this because it gives a great idea of just how far these POPs can travel and how they can actually make it into contamination of human drinking water or food sources. So we have this factory, which we could just say is a plastic production facility, and it could be combusting, different materials or burning them and releasing things such as PCBs, could be releasing dioxins. There's a lot of different compounds that could be released from this facility. But when they make it into the atmosphere, stuck on pieces of particulate matter, or they're released in, discharge from this facility, they could run off into surface waters. And so we can follow these two different routes of exposure. If they make it into the atmosphere, they could fall with precipitation, either into a body of water or on a land. Then they could make it into a food source, such as corn. That corn could be fed to humans, or it could be fed to cows, who would then pass it through their bodies through, meat that humans eat. And that's how humans could become exposed from a food route. Now, humans could also eat seafood that is contaminated with these persistent organic pollutants when it falls as precipitation into their body of water, or when it runs off from this factory if they're discharging wastewater. And so this is why it's so critical to try to regulate facilities that release persistent organic pollutants, because they can have impacts hundreds of miles away due to the ability of these pollutants to travel through the wind, through the water. And so even if there's not one of these facilities in your neighborhood or your backyard, this could be having an impact on your food sources. And this is one of the important things we have to understand about persistent organic pollutants. Let's take a look too now at PCBs and perchlorates, because they're two examples that we want to know more about. As I mentioned earlier, PCBs can be added to paints, to plastics, and then they're released oftentimes through industrial wastewater. So if we look at this POPs diagram here, this could be a paint production facility. Maybe it's discharging its wastewater, into a holding pond, but then it overflows and it runs into this pond. now we have these toxic PCBs, which can get into this ecosystem. It could be causing endocrine disruption or spawning failure in these fish. And then it could also lead to reproductive failure or cancer in humans if they drink the water from the pond, if they eat the fish that come from this pond. And so how is this human exposure going to happen? Again, primarily through the consumption of these animal products, which could be fish from the pond or a hamburger that had eaten grass or corn contaminated with PCBs. Perchlorates, I mentioned earlier, are more likely going to be found near military facilities or rocket launch pads. And that's because rocket fuel and fireworks are also going to be examples of how perchlorates could be discharged. So they could be emitting from the boosters on a rocket or coming from the fireworks that are falling back down to Earth. And so even though that may happen far away from you, it can remain in the soil. And so it could contaminate plants, but it could also leach into groundwater. So if you're using well water or you're drawing from an aquifer to water your fields, you could be passing perchlorates into surface waters, onto agricultural fields that way. And so the big takeaway here from POPs is they last a long time, they're persistent in ecosystems and in organisms' bodies, and they can have impacts far away from where they're produced and released. So for practice FRQ 8.7 today, I want you to explain why the release of PCBs into an aquatic ecosystem may have longer lasting negative impacts on organisms than the release of synthetic nitrates. And the concept that we're practicing here, the skill, is just explaining an environmental concept. And so again, make sure you're trying to go into at least 2 solid pieces of detail, give some full explanation here. Don't just write a quick description or identify, and really try to compare PCBs to synthetic nitrates.
Now back to Stuart Laser Talk here on WSTU 1450. And back to your host, Dr. Tred J. Rosacker.
All right, we're back. Well, I hope you paid attention. That was a 10-minute piece by a PhD who feels it's his mission to try to educate people about this toxic burden that's happening to us. We are being poisoned. We really are, you guys. I mean, if you don't think so, listen to it again. It's available on YouTube. You can send me out an email, Dr. Tred. Slim Body Laser Spot Gmail. You can go to my contact on the website. I will forward you this video. And, I think about these persistent compounds and the fact that it's really related to the jet fuel, the perchlorates. How many of you out there have been listening to the radio lately and they keep talking about these injuries at Camp Lejeune? The compensation that's available. If you've ever been at Camp Lejeune during these time frames and you're suffering with cancer or this and that, there might be compensation for you. You've heard the ads. It's all over the internet. Camp Lejeune is a place where they tested jet fuel and bombs and poisoned the groundwater as a result. And it started showing up in the soldiers and the people there as cancer. And the government was forced to acknowledge this. And now they're trying to compensate and pay for your suffering if you were exposed to this. Instead of cleaning it up or making a better decision, they just want to pay you for your sickness. Well, you guys, we live in Martin County, and I've lived here since 1972 in an area called the South Fork. And when we first came here at night, I would hear off in the distance jet engines running all night long. And I'm like, what is that? It's called Pratt Whitney aircraft. And there are a facility which tests jet engines. They've been doing it since the 60s, by the way. It hasn't just happened. And they're using jet fuel in large amounts, not to mention things they don't even tell you about. And they were storing all of the waste in these wastewater ponds. And they sink into the ground. These perchlorates go into the groundwater system. And it seems that they're showing up out in the Jupiter Acres area. I don't know the name, off of I-95 in the Jupiter area. And they're saying there's cancer clusters out there. That's right here in Martin County. And they're just starting to talk about it now. They stopped or supposedly cleaned up the way that they're handling these things, but they're still testing jet engines. And what about the fireworks? Did you hear that? The fireworks that go off. Oh my God, they're so beautiful. And we're standing underneath it. And that smell, you ever smell gunpowder? You've been poisoned. And they're persistent, meaning they don't go away. And they're organic, meaning they're carbon-based, fat-soluble, and they are stored in your body fat. I mean, wow. Now, we know for a fact dementia, Alzheimer's, neuropathy, low energy, hormonal issues, low testosterone, endocrine disorders are all related to these chemical exposures. What is the most common thing we got going on right now? Assisted living memory care centers. Everybody's losing their memory. And the way the body handles it is by storing it in your fatty tissue, because that's the only safe place to put it. It can't stay in the blood. You get exposed to it. Now, it can't stay in the bloodstream. It's not going to be stored in your long bones. That's where you make red blood cells. It's not going to be stored in your brain tissue. The only place it is stored is in your body fat. And for the most part, it's stored in the body fat, which is on the outside of the body, meaning subcutaneous fat. So you've got two compartments where you hold fat. Your visceral fat surrounds your organs. It's under your muscle, those big bellies you see, that's visceral fat. The outer fat is subcutaneous fat, and that's on the outside of the body. That area is where most of you store these poisons. Now, I was reading on the internet about that the Norwegian salmon from Norway is some of the most toxic fish in the ocean. And, if you're from Norway, your whole life is salmon. I mean, that's their number one output. That's their number one product. They got huge farms in Norway, and it's beautiful, clean, fresh water. They call them fjords, but they're really, bays and cuts. They call them fjords. And so I went on that line. I looked at that, and it said that salmon have a 30% normal 30% body fat compared to lean muscle. In other words, they're fish that contain a lot of fat. You know that. Omega-3s, right? Great for your health, right? Well, guess what? They're also full of dioxin and poisons because of their body fat. Now, wild caught salmon in cleaner water, less toxins. The fish that are coming out of Norway are being farmed, but not farmed in a pond, farmed in the ocean in these big pens. So there's a lot of fresh ocean water that comes through, but there's so many of them in these pens that they have to feed them meal made, by man, they feed them. And as they feed them, they poop, it trickles down, there's lack of circulation, and they're accumulating poisons. How many of you eat salmon? We're told salmon is the healthiest fish you can eat, right? Well, guess what? You're getting poisoned. And all the pharmacological agents you take every day to feel better, to look better, the steroids, the antibiotics, the mood enhancers, the clothing you're wearing, the rayon, the nylon, the spandex. If it's not cotton or wool, it's petroleum, the plastics that control, as he went over. I'm not going to go in depth about this. So what I have found is that if you do not handle the toxic burden, which is tied up in fat, there's a layer of poisons that collect in the fatty tissue. When you force somebody to lose body fat, they have more poisons that become liberated and flow through the system. And that toxic release, which was protected by the fat. Now, you're not healthy, but at least you're not suffering. Over time, it makes you sick. And then as you start to lose body fat, you get toxic release of these fat-soluble chemicals. And depending on where you are, how many times you've been gassed or poisoned, your level of health, how much you exercise, some have more than others, but everybody will have symptoms from it. So here's a typical example. A person is overweight and they exercise, they eat pretty good, but you know what? They're carrying a lot of body fat. In fact, we're 80% overweight in America, 80%. In the not the 1900s, 20 years ago, we were only 40% of America was overweight. Today, it's 80%. Obesity today is 40% of our population is obese. Back 20 years ago, it was like 4%. And we're holding body fat to protect us from these poisons. Believe it. Believe me when I tell you this. This is fact. And what happens is we don't like how we look. The world is critical. You got the new map. You got the Fitbit. You got these programs. $billion industry on losing body fat. All of it fails. Why? Because when you remove fat and you do not detoxify at the same time, you become a miserable person because of the release of the poisons from losing that body fat. This is well-documented stuff. So you go to the doc who doesn't believe in poisons, by the way. They just keep giving, they treat poisons with poison, by the way, right? When you don't feel well, they give you drugs to feel better, which is really just repoisoning you. And now, doc looks at you, checks your body. Oh my God, you're obese. Push yourself from the table, man. Exercise more, clean up your diet. You can do that. We're good people. I mean, we have businesses. We've created incredible wealth in our life. We're good family members. What the heck? How hard will it be to push? I'll do this. And we start to lose body fat. And what happens is that protective layer is no longer protecting some of those toxins, and they are released into your bloodstream within the day. And these are the people that lose weight and are miserable while they do it because they get the night sweats. They get, they feel they taste metal in their mouth, and they're eating less. They're tired thinking wise. They don't have the energy that they had because of the brain needs these carbohydrates. So they're cutting out carbs, going into protein and fats. And, it's like, I can do it, but, weight loss sucks. It's hard. It's painful. And here's what happens. You say to yourself, my God, what have I changed? I've given up the foods I love. I've given up the carbohydrates. I've given up the pasta dishes. I've given up the comfort food, which is so indigenous in where I'm from. And you know what? I'm craving sugar. I'm craving carbohydrate. And a person will overeat, and you don't know this, and I know this, is you make fat after a meal. You don't make fat after 2 weeks of overeating, buddy. You make fat after one meal. If you eat more than 400 to 500 calories at one sitting, 4 hours, any extra calories over that 400 or 500 are going to be made into fat. I promise you that. And then you're hungry again, 8 in the morning. You know, you had a 500 calorie breakfast, healthy food. That's good. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 500 calories. You burn 100 calories an hour. It's 12 o'clock and you're hungry again. You have a nice, healthy 500 to 600 calorie sandwich, low in fat, healthy stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've had 5 hours. You burn 100 calories an hour. You're good. It's dinner. You're hungry again. And you have a 500 calorie dinner, which most of you don't. But so, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've had my 500. And that is the perfect amount to not make fat. But here's what really happens. I get up in the morning and I go for the Denny's Grand Slam, or maybe I go to the bagel break, or whatever those bagel places are. 350 to 400 calories in one bagel with cream cheese. Plus you got your coffee and you got your sweet, you have another little sweet, maybe you get 2. So you might have 800 to 1,000 calories. If you went for the Denny's Grand Slam breakfast, you're up about 1,800 calories at 8 in the morning. You eat it all. You can only burn 100 calories an hour. So from 8 to 9, you burn 100. From 9 to 10, you burn 100. From 10 to 11, you burn 100. From 11 to 12, you burn 100. But you had 1,800 calories. Where do you think the other 900 calories goes? It doesn't stay in your bloodstream, because then you'd have diabetes. Your body uses insulin to immediately put it back into the fat to make fat. And you have made 900 calories of pure fat at 12 o'clock. That's how it works, people. And you know what? You're hungry again. It's 12 o'clock. That Denny's Grand Slam didn't really last. You're hoping you wouldn't, but heck, you're hungry again. And you like the Publix Heroes, which I do. And so you go buy a Publix Hero, and they are about between 1,400 to 1,800 calories in a full sub. So let's just use the 1,400 calorie one. It's 12 o'clock and you heat your sub. So you burn 100 from 1, 2, 3, 4. By 5 o'clock, you burned 500 calories in work of that sub, but you had a 1,400 calorie sub. There's another 900 calories that you didn't burn. At 6 o'clock, insulin makes it into fat, and you put the fat back on top of those poisons, and you feel better. It's 6 o'clock and you're hungry again. That's right. We eat every 3-4 hours, and your friends are here from out of town and they all want to go to the Bonefish, or maybe, the endless salad at the Olive Garden, or, any one of these restaurants. An average restaurant meal is between 2,500 to 6,000 calories, you guys. And that means having drinks, having bread, having a dessert, extra butter, whatever. But let's just say it's a 3,000 calorie dinner, which is minimal. Hey, a large soda is 700 calories, by the way. A large Coke. Big gulp. Now, it's 6 o'clock. You ate at the Bonefish. You ate a 4,000 calorie meal. Nothing's changed. You're not exercising. You're not running any races. So 7 o'clock, you burn 100. 8 o'clock, you burn 100. 9, 10, 11. By 11 o'clock, you've only burned 400 to 500 calories towards work, towards exercise, but you had a 4,000 calorie meal. At 11 o'clock, when you're going to sleep, you've now made another 2,500 calories has gone directly into fat. So in one day, my friend, you just made a pound of fat. And this is how we protect the poisons, because we feel better after we eat, because you're not detoxifying. Now, I've known this for many years. I explain this Every time I sit down with a new client, I go over the poisons, I go over the toxins. Now, my solution for this at the spa, if you're interested in knowing more about this, please come in. I'm going to do some talks on this and lectures around town. But for the most part, you come in, I'll show it to you. I'll explain it to you because I'm passionate about it. You got to know this stuff. So what happens is, because the poisons are tied up in your body fat and the outside of the body, it's very hard for your body to get rid of it through exercise. And there's no mechanism in your body that allows you to release poisons. We're not born with a petroleum port, right? A petroleum port, I call it. Maybe 10,000 years down the road or half a century, later, we might develop these little openings where petroleum will start to leak out, right? Back into it, it sucks out all the dioxins and the PCBs and all the crap that's been absorbed by your fatty tissue. That ain't happening right now. You need to take a supplement or something that will bind with fat soluble poisons so you can remove them, like soap when you wash your hands. But you can't do that internally. But they have herbs. They're super effective herbs that can get rid of toxins. And I'll give you a real quick example. A drug test. We know you used to take these drug tests, and you take those supplements, Golden Seal. They had these supplements. You take them for 2 or 3 days, and it sucks all the poisons out of your body so you can pass your urine test. Those are the compounds that detoxify your body. That's one of them. Okay? But what happens is, because the poisons are tied up so deep in your fat, that if you don't release them from there first, you gotta mobilize it first. You got to get it out of the protective fatty layer into the bloodstream. We use the laser to do that. That red light laser that I'm applying on people is bringing circulation to the surface. It's opening up the fat cells, and it's dislodging some of those poisons. Now, we give supplements when you begin at the Slim Body. They're called Detox 2. It's a simple over-the-counter herbal supplement that you can buy to help get rid of poisons. So the progress is, when you start our plan, you're taking these supplements in the morning and in the evening, 3 day, during the whole process. And these herbs, they're golden. There's Irish moss, rhubarb, cayenne pepper, cascara, Irish moss. These are some of these natural food ingredients. And as the laser releases it, whole body vibration pushes them into the bloodstream. And then what happens is your body will remove them through the urine. That's how we handle it. It's a detoxification program. And when you get rid of the poisons, now we're not getting rid of all of them, please. This is we're seriously poisoned. There's better detoxes than that. Infrared saunas, exercise, juice fasting, too much stuff to go into here. However, just know you got to do something. You gotta do something, you guys. We can't avoid these poisons. It is ubiquitous with our culture and where we live and what we breathe and the things we do. Your only chance is to have a program of detoxification that's effective. Now, you can spend $10,000 and find out how many poisons you got in your body, or you can just follow some simple guidelines on detoxification. All right. Now, nobody's really teaching this or showing this. I know, I'm a professional. This is all I do. I hope this brought some information and knowledge to your life. I really, truly care for you, and we're there to help. Slim Body Laser Spa. Give me a call. We can help you.